Ambassador Helen Price walked into the grand chamber of the Galactic Council for the last time. Her footsteps echoed in the massive hall, where representatives from 12 alien species sat in their designated sections. The ceiling stretched so high that clouds actually formed near the top. Everything about this place was designed to make visitors feel small and unimportant. Helen carried a simple data pad in her hands. On it was the most important message she would ever deliver. The alien delegates barely looked at her as she approached the speaking platform. They were used to humans asking for help, requesting resources, or begging for permission to do things that other species took for granted. The Zeltharians, tall and proud with their blue-scaled skin, sat in the highest section. They controlled the military forces of the Council. Their leader, Commander Vextal, was reading reports and didn't even glance up when Helen entered. Next to them sat the ancient Korthax, beings so old that some claimed they remembered the birth of stars. Their wrinkled gray faces showed nothing but boredom. The Vidari occupied the technology section. These silver-skinned aliens had built most of the advanced systems that kept the galaxy running. Their multiple arms moved constantly over control panels, managing communications across thousands of worlds. They considered humans to be primitive children playing with tools they didn't understand. Helen reached the center platform and activated the speaking system. A soft chime filled the chamber, and slowly, the alien delegates turned their attention to her. Most looked annoyed at the interruption. "Honored members of the Galactic Council," Helen began, her voice steady despite the enormity of what she was about to say. "I stand before you today to deliver humanity's formal notice of withdrawal from this council." The chamber fell silent. Then slowly, sounds of confusion and surprise rippled through the alien sections. Commander Vextal finally looked up from his reports, his reptilian eyes narrowing. The ancient Korthax leader, Prime Velmoth, leaned forward with interest for the first time in decades. "Withdrawal?" asked Technarch Yvdal of the Vidari, his mechanical voice echoing through speakers. "Humans cannot survive without council support. Your species lacks the technology and wisdom necessary for independent galactic civilization," Helen smiled calmly. "We appreciate everything the Council has taught us over the past 2 centuries. However, humanity has decided to forge its own path among the stars. We will be leaving Council space within the next 72 hours. Laughter erupted from several sections. The Borganian trade representative actually slapped his knee, a gesture that looked strange on his insect-like body. Commander Vextal stood up, his massive frame towering over the other delegates. "This is madness," he declared. "Humans are the most violent and unpredictable species in the galaxy. Without our guidance, you will destroy yourselves within a generation. We have protected you from your own nature, and we thank you for that protection," Helen replied politely. "But we believe it's time for us to take responsibility for our own destiny." Prime Velmoth spoke for the first time, his voice carrying the weight of millennia. "Child species, you do not understand the dangers that exist beyond Council space. There are hostile forces, cosmic phenomena, and challenges that require the combined wisdom of all Council members to overcome. Alone you are vulnerable," Helen nodded respectfully. "We understand the risks, Honored Prime, but we also understand that growth requires taking risks. Humanity has learned much from the Council, and now we wish to apply that knowledge in our own way." The Trade Minister, a floating jellyfish-like creature named Kalneth, pulsed with agitated colors. "Human colonies provide significant resources to the galactic economy. Your departure will disrupt established trade routes and agreements. All existing contracts will be honored until their completion," Helen assured him. "We're not abandoning our responsibilities. We're simply choosing not to renew them." For the next hour, the alien delegates tried to convince Helen to reconsider. They offered better trade deals, promised more representation in council decisions, and even suggested creating a special human advisory committee. But Helen remained firm. The decision had been made. Commander Vextal eventually grew frustrated with the diplomatic approach. "Fine," he said, his voice cold. "Leave. The galaxy will be more peaceful without human chaos disrupting our orderly civilization. Your impulsive nature and emotional decision-making have been a constant source of problems. We understand your position, Helen said, and we hold no grudge against the Council for their views. We simply believe that different approaches to life and problem-solving can coexist in this vast galaxy. As Helen left the chamber, she could hear the delegates already discussing how to redistribute human territories and resources. They seemed almost excited about the prospect of a more orderly galaxy without human unpredictability. Outside the council building, Captain Jake Morrison waited with a small escort ship. He was a tall man with graying hair and eyes that had seen too many battles. As the military leader coordinating the human exodus, he had spent months planning the massive undertaking of moving millions of people across space. "How did they take it?" he asked as Helen boarded the ship. "About as expected," she replied. "They think we're making a huge mistake." Jake smiled grimly. "Maybe we are, but it's our mistake to make." The ship lifted off from the council world and headed toward the edge of the system, where the largest fleet in human history waited. Thousands of ships floated in formation, everything from massive colony vessels to small personal craft. Every human family that wanted to leave had been given the chance. Admiral Lisa Carter commanded the fleet from the bridge of the UHS Freedom, humanity's newest and most advanced ship. She was a brilliant strategist who had grown tired of having her military plans constantly overruled by alien commanders who thought humans were too aggressive. Dr. Kevin Walsh had spent 2 years identifying suitable star systems far from council space. His surveys had found planets with breathable atmospheres, abundant resources, and no hostile alien presence. The journey would take months, but the destinations promised new beginnings. As the last human ships departed council space, Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his flagship and watched the stars ahead. Behind them, the lights of council worlds grew dimmer. Ahead lay the unknown, full of dangers and possibilities. "Think they'll miss us?" asked Dr. Walsh, joining Jake at the observation window. Jake considered the question. "They think we're just another junior species that couldn't handle galactic civilization. They'll probably celebrate our departure. And when they realize what we actually contributed to their perfect order?" Dr. Walsh asked. Jake smiled. "By then, we'll be too far away for them to find us easily, and we'll have built something new." The human fleet jumped to hyperspace, leaving council space forever. Behind them, the alien delegates continued their discussions about the improved efficiency they expected without human interference. None of them suspected that they had just made the biggest mistake in galactic history. 6 months had passed since the last human ship disappeared into the darkness beyond council space. The Galactic Council had never been more efficient. Trade flowed smoothly along established routes. Diplomatic negotiations proceeded without emotional outbursts or unexpected demands. Military operations followed precise protocols that had been refined over thousands of years. Councillor Zextar reviewed the latest reports from his office high above the council chambers. The Zeltharian military commander was pleased with what he saw. Crime rates had dropped in former human sectors. Pirate activity had decreased significantly. Even the minor conflicts between younger species had become easier to resolve without human representatives constantly suggesting aggressive solutions. "The galaxy is finally at peace," he said to his aide, a younger Zeltharian named Colvin. "Order has been restored." Colvin nodded agreement, but something in his expression suggested uncertainty. "Sir, there have been some unusual reports from the outer sectors. Nothing serious, but patterns that our analysts find interesting." Zextar waved dismissively. "Minor adjustments are normal after any significant change. The galaxy is adapting to proper management." In the ancient halls of the Korthax, Prime Velmoth sat in meditation as he had for centuries. The old being's mind touched the vast networks that connected all council worlds, sensing the flow of information and energy across space. Everything felt orderly and predictable, exactly as it should be. Yet something nagged at the edge of his consciousness. The youngest council species seemed less innovative in their problem-solving. The Nalari, who had only joined the council 50 years ago, had stopped proposing new ideas for improving galactic communications. The Thrakari had, ceased their experimental approaches to terraforming. Even the Vidari seemed to be relying more heavily on existing technology rather than developing new solutions. Prime Velmoth dismissed these concerns as natural growth. Young species eventually learned to follow established wisdom rather than constantly trying to reinvent everything. It was a sign of maturity. Technarch Yivdal worked in the vast technological centers of the Vidari homeworld. Thousands of his people monitored the systems that kept galactic civilization running. Hyperspace navigation networks carried ships safely between stars. Communication arrays transmitted messages across impossible distances. Trade computers managed the exchange of goods between hundreds of worlds. Everything worked perfectly. Perhaps too perfectly. Yivdal had noticed that system upgrades had slowed dramatically. For the past 6 months, his engineers had been maintaining existing technology rather than improving it. When he asked them about new projects, they gave logical explanations about the importance of stability over innovation. But Yivdal remembered the humans. They had always been asking questions about how things worked, suggesting crazy modifications and proposing solutions that seemed impossible until they actually tried them. Many of their ideas had been terrible, but some had led to breakthrough, innovations that the Vidari still used. Perhaps we have achieved optimal efficiency, Yivdal told himself. Further innovation may be unnecessary. Trade Minister Kalneth floated through the commercial district of the central trade hub, his jellyfish-like body pulsing with satisfied colors. Revenue was up across all sectors. Shipping delays had virtually disappeared. Quality control issues had become rare. The removal of human unpredictability from trade negotiations had eliminated most disputes, yet something felt different about the marketplace. The vendors seemed less creative in their offerings. New products appeared less frequently. Even the advertisements lacked the spark that had once made galactic commerce exciting. Kalneth noticed that several alien species had stopped experimenting with human-inspired business practices. The Corelli had abandoned their flexible pricing systems. The Vorthak had returned to traditional manufacturing methods. The innovation that humans had brought to galactic trade was fading away. Stability is more valuable than novelty, Kalneth reasoned. Predictable profits are better than risky experiments. On the frontier worlds, different problems were emerging. The Borgarian hive, a hostile insectoid species that had been quiet for decades, began sending scout ships into Council space. Their probes tested border defenses and monitored trade routes. When Council forces responded, the Borgarians retreated quickly, but they always returned. Captain Muldar of the Council Border Patrol filed his weekly report with growing concern. The Borgarian activity has increased by 300% over the past month. Their scouts are mapping our defensive positions and studying our response patterns. His superior, General Hexthon, reviewed the data with typical Zeltharian confidence. The Borgarians are merely testing our resolve. Our defenses are impenetrable, and our response protocols are flawless. They will eventually realize the futility of challenging Council military superiority. But Captain Muldar had fought alongside human forces in past conflicts. He remembered how humans would suggest unconventional tactics that caught enemies off guard. The current Council military doctrine was indeed flawless, but it was also completely predictable. Any enemy who studied their patterns long enough could develop countermeasures. Strange energy signatures began appearing in distant sectors of space. Council science vessels detected anomalous readings that didn't match any known phenomena. The readings were subtle and appeared randomly, making them difficult to study. Dr. Thelvas, a Korthak scientist, led the investigation team. She approached the mystery with the methodical precision that her species was famous for. Every detection was catalogued, analyzed, and compared with historical data. The research proceeded exactly as Council scientific protocols demanded. But the anomalies remained unexplained. Dr. Thelvas found herself wishing she could consult with human scientists. They had a talent for making intuitive leaps that led to breakthrough discoveries. Their wild theories were usually wrong, but occasionally they stumbled onto explanations that more methodical approaches missed. "We will solve this mystery through proper scientific method," Dr. Thelvas assured her team. "Patience and precision will yield results." The most troubling signs appeared in the automated systems that managed galactic infrastructure. Navigation computers began experiencing minor calculation errors. Communication arrays developed synchronization problems. Trade management systems produced occasional data conflicts. Emergency coordinator Thelvas, a different being from the scientist, oversaw the maintenance teams that kept everything running. The problems were small and easily corrected, but they had never occurred before. The systems had been flawless for centuries. Investigation revealed that many of these systems had been modified or improved by human engineers during their time in the Council. The humans had added backup protocols, error-checking subroutines, and adaptive algorithms that other species had never fully understood. As these human-designed components began to age without proper maintenance, minor failures started occurring. We will reverse engineer the human modifications and replace them with proper Council technology, Thelvas decided. Temporary inconvenience is preferable to dependence on inferior human engineering, but the reverse engineering proved more difficult than expected. Human solutions often ignored established rules in favor of creative workarounds. Their code included intuitive leaps that functioned perfectly but defied logical explanation. Council engineers found themselves unable to replicate human innovations using traditional methods. As the months passed, these small problems accumulated. Border security became more predictable. Scientific progress slowed. Technological innovation stagnated. Trade lost its dynamic energy. The galaxy was indeed more orderly than ever before, but something vital had been lost. In the council chambers, the alien delegates congratulated themselves on their improved efficiency. Statistics showed increased productivity, reduced conflicts, and better resource management. The removal of human chaos had clearly benefited galactic civilization. None of them suspected that they had eliminated the very source of the innovation and adaptability that had kept their ancient civilization growing and evolving. They had chosen order over chaos, predictability over creativity, and stability over growth. The galaxy was running perfectly, like a beautiful machine with every component functioning exactly as designed. But machines, no matter how perfect, cannot adapt to unexpected challenges. And in the dark spaces between stars, unexpected challenges were already beginning to stir. 18 months after the human departure, the first real crisis hit the Galactic Council like a hammer blow. The Borgarian hive launched simultaneous attacks on 3 Council worlds, striking with a coordination and ferocity that caught everyone, completely off guard. Councillor Zextar stood in the war room watching displays that showed the unfolding disaster. The red icons representing Borgarian forces moved across tactical maps with disturbing efficiency. They had bypassed the strongest defensive positions and struck at exactly the right points to cause maximum damage. How did they penetrate our sensor networks? Demanded General Hexthon, his usually calm voice strained with disbelief. Our early warning systems are supposed to be perfect. Captain Muldar, who had been tracking Borgarian activity for months, stepped forward nervously. Sir, they've been studying our patrol patterns and response protocols. They know exactly how we operate. Zextar snarled, showing his sharp teeth. Impossible. Our military doctrine has been refined over thousands of years. It is flawless. That's the problem, sir, Muldar said quietly. It's too flawless. Too predictable. The Borgarian attacks followed a pattern that revealed their deep understanding of Council military thinking. They struck during shift changes when communications were briefly disrupted. They used decoy forces to trigger standard defensive responses, then attacked the real targets while Council forces were out of position. Every countermeasure the Council deployed had been anticipated and neutralized. Admiral Kextoth, the Supreme Military Commander, ordered a massive counterattack using the full power of the Council fleet. The response was textbook perfect, following established tactics that had won countless battles in the past. Ships moved in precise formations, weapons fired in coordinated volleys, and tactical decisions followed approved protocols. The Borgarians destroyed half the Council fleet in 6 hours. They had studied Council military doctrine so thoroughly that they knew exactly what the response would be to every situation. They positioned their forces to exploit the predictable movements of Council ships. They jammed communications at precisely the moments when Council commanders would try to coordinate their standard maneuvers. In the technology centers of the Vidari homeworld, Technarch Yvdal watched his carefully maintained systems begin to fail in cascading waves. The hyperspace navigation network, which had worked flawlessly for centuries, started producing calculation errors that stranded ships between star systems. The problems had started small, a few decimal places of precision lost here and there, minor synchronization issues between navigation beacons, backup systems that didn't activate quite fast enough during routine maintenance cycles. But hyperspace navigation was incredibly complex. Tiny errors multiplied into catastrophic failures. Ships that should have arrived at their destinations found themselves lost in empty space, their navigation computers unable to calculate safe jumps home. How is this possible? Yvdal demanded of his chief engineer, a skilled Vidari named Zorthek. These systems have been stable for millennia. Zorthek's multiple arms moved nervously over his control panel. Technarch, we've discovered that many critical navigation algorithms were modified by human engineers during their time with the Council. They added adaptive subroutines that we never fully understood. Yvdal felt a chill run through his mechanical components. What kind of modifications? Error correction routines that learned from previous mistakes. Prediction algorithms that adapted to changing stellar conditions. Backup systems that could improvise solutions when standard protocols failed. Zorthek paused. Without regular updates and maintenance by their creators, these systems are beginning to degrade. The communication arrays that connected thousands of worlds began experiencing similar problems. The ancient Korthax had built these networks using time-tested principles that had served the galaxy well. But over the years, human technicians had improved the systems with modifications that seemed almost magical in their effectiveness. Prime Velmoth sensed the growing chaos through his connection to the galactic information networks. Messages were being delayed, sometimes by hours. Data streams that should have flowed smoothly were developing interruptions and gaps. The perfect order that he had enjoyed for the past 18 months was crumbling. The humans, he whispered to his aide, a younger Korthax named Jeltar. What exactly did they do to our systems? Jeltar consulted the ancient records. Master, human engineers often ignored our established protocols. They would add unauthorized modifications that somehow improved system performance. We tolerated their chaos because the results were undeniably effective. And now? Now those modifications are failing, and we cannot repair them because we never understood how they worked. The trade networks managed by Kalneth suffered similar breakdowns. Cargo ships found themselves stranded when navigation systems failed. Communication delays meant that supply and demand information was always out of date. Quality control systems that had incorporated human-designed adaptive algorithms began producing inconsistent results. Emergency Coordinator Thelvas found himself managing more crises in a single week than he had handled in the previous decade. Every system that humans had touched seemed to be developing problems simultaneously. The backup protocols they had installed were failing. The error correction routines they had written were producing errors instead of fixing them. We need to contact the humans, Thelvas told the Emergency Council. They are the only ones who understand these systems well enough to repair them. But when the Council tried to send messages to human space, they discovered that the humans had vanished completely. Their ships had traveled beyond the range of standard communication arrays. The hyperspace beacons that might have carried messages to their new colonies were failing due to navigation network problems. The few long-range scout ships that tried to follow human exodus routes found empty space. The humans had covered their tracks well, jumping from system to system in patterns that made tracking impossible. They had disappeared into the galaxy's vast, unexplored regions. Dr. Thelvas, the Korthax scientist investigating the mysterious energy anomalies, made a disturbing discovery. The strange readings that had been appearing randomly throughout Council space were not random at all. They followed a pattern that became visible only when viewed across the entire galactic region. The anomalies are spreading, she reported to the Science Council. They appear to be some kind of dark energy disturbance that could threaten the stability of entire star systems. Using traditional Korthax analytical methods, Dr. Thelvas and her team worked for months to understand the phenomenon. They built complex mathematical models and ran simulations on the most powerful computers available. But the anomalies continued to spread, and their models could not predict where they would appear next. In desperation, Dr. Thelvas found herself searching through old research files looking for any work that humans had done on similar phenomena. She discovered that a human scientist named Amanda Fox had written theoretical papers about dark energy disturbances that matched the current situation almost perfectly. This human understood something we missed, Dr. Thelvas admitted to her research team. Her theories were considered too speculative by our scientific standards, but they may be the only hope of solving this crisis. The military situation continued to deteriorate. The Borgarians, emboldened by their initial success, launched more attacks throughout Council space. They had clearly studied every aspect of Council military doctrine and developed specific countermeasures for each standard tactic. General Hexthon tried everything in the official tactical manual: defensive formations, offensive strikes, feints, diversions, siege tactics, mobile warfare. The Borgarians had prepared for all of it. They responded to each maneuver with perfect counters, as if they had read the same manual and written detailed responses. "We need new tactics," Captain Moldar suggested during a strategy meeting. "Approaches that aren't in the standard doctrine." "Impossible," Hexthon replied firmly. "Council military doctrine represents thousands of years of refined tactical knowledge. There are no better approaches." "But the humans used to suggest modifications to our tactics," Moldar persisted. "Unconventional ideas that sometimes worked. Human suggestions were chaotic and unpredictable," Hexthon said with disgust. "We tolerated them only because they were council members. Their departure has eliminated that source of confusion from our strategic planning." As the crisis deepened, more council members began to remember things about the humans that they had previously dismissed. The Vidari recalled human engineers who could fix problems that stumped their best technicians. The Korthax remembered human scientists, whose wild theories occasionally led to important discoveries. The Zeltharians remembered human military officers whose crazy battle plans sometimes achieved impossible victories. But it was too late. The humans were gone, disappeared into the vast darkness between stars. The galaxy that had seemed so much more orderly without them was now falling apart, one system at a time. The perfect machine of galactic civilization had encountered problems that required exactly the kind of chaotic, unpredictable, innovative thinking that the Council had been so eager to eliminate. And somewhere in the darkness beyond Council space, the humans were building some 2.5 years after the human exodus. The Galactic Council faced complete collapse. The Borgarian hive had conquered 4 Council worlds and showed no signs of slowing their advance. The dark energy anomalies had grown into massive storms that threatened to destroy entire star systems. Infrastructure failures occurred daily across hundreds of worlds. Supreme Counselor Mirthak, an ancient Korthax, who had been elected emergency leader, sat in his chambers reviewing reports that painted an increasingly desperate picture. The Council's military forces were in retreat on every front. Their technological systems continued to fail in ways that their best engineers couldn't repair. The trade networks that fed galactic civilization were breaking down. "How long before complete system collapse?" he asked his aide, Jeltar. "At the current rate of deterioration, perhaps 6 months," Jeltar replied quietly. "Maybe less if the Borgarians continue their advance, or if the dark energy storms reach the core worlds." Mirthak closed his ancient eyes and felt the weight of billions of lives resting on his decisions. The proud Galactic Council, which had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years, was dying, and he knew exactly why. "Send for the emergency council," he ordered. "It's time to do something that will shame us all." The emergency session brought together the leaders of all 12 council species. They gathered in the great chamber where 3 years earlier, they had laughed at humanity's decision to leave. Now that same chamber felt like a tomb. "We must find the humans," Murthak announced without ceremony. They are our only hope. The chamber erupted in protests. Councillor Zextar rose to his full imposing height. We cannot beg for help from a species we dismissed as inferior. The damage to council prestige would be catastrophic. Council prestige will be meaningless if the council no longer exists, Murthak replied coldly. Our military doctrine has proven useless against the Borgarians. Our technology is failing without human innovations. Our scientists cannot solve the dark energy crisis using traditional methods. Technarch Yivdal spoke with reluctance. Supreme Councillor, even if we wanted to contact the humans, we cannot reach them. Our long-range communication arrays are failing, and we have no idea where they went. Then we will find them, Murthak declared. Prepare the fastest ship available. Load it with emergency supplies and our best navigation equipment. Someone must reach human space and deliver our plea for help. General Hexthon stood up angrily. This is madness. We are the Galactic Council. We do not beg lesser species for assistance. Lesser species? Murthak's voice carried the authority of eons. General, look at your battle reports. How many worlds? Have you lost to the Borgarians? How many ships have been destroyed because you cannot adapt your tactics? The humans may have been chaotic and unpredictable, but they were never lesser. The debate continued for hours, but the reality of the situation could not be ignored. Council forces suffered another devastating defeat while they argued. A dark energy storm consumed an entire solar system, destroying 3 inhabited worlds. Infrastructure failures left dozens of planets without communication or transportation. Finally, Captain Moldar volunteered for the desperate mission. He had worked with human forces in the past and understood their value better than most council officers. His ship, the Swift Current, was loaded with emergency supplies and equipped with experimental long-range sensors. If you find them, Murthak told Moldar privately, you must make them understand the galaxy is dying without them. The Swift Current launched from council space and jumped toward the region where humans had last been detected. Moldar and his small crew spent weeks following faint traces through empty space. They tracked energy signatures from old human ships, followed hyperspace disturbances that might indicate large fleet movements, and searched abandoned waypoints for any clue about human destinations. The journey took them farther from council space than any official expedition had ever traveled. They passed through regions where stars were younger and more violent, where cosmic phenomena created beautiful but dangerous displays of energy and matter. It was exactly the kind of frontier territory that humans would find attractive. After months of searching, the Swift Current's sensors detected something impossible, a massive artificial structure floating in empty space between star systems. It was clearly human in design but far more advanced than anything humans had possessed when they left council space. This is impossible, said Navigator Velkoth, studying the sensor readings. That structure is larger than our biggest space stations, but it's not orbiting any planet or star. How do they maintain power and life support? Before Moldar could answer, the ship's communication system activated. A voice spoke in clear galactic standard, but with the unmistakable accent of human speech. Unknown vessel. This is Commander Rick Hayes of the Human Colonial Federation. You are entering protected space. State your identity and purpose. Moldar activated the communication system with trembling hands. Commander Hayes, this is Captain Moldar of the Galactic Council ship Swift Current. I carry an urgent message for human leadership. There was a long pause. When the human voice returned, it carried a mixture of surprise and concern. Captain Moldar, you are very far from council space. What kind of urgent message brings you into the frontier regions? Commander, the council requests immediate assistance. We are facing multiple crises that threaten the survival of galactic civilization. Another pause, longer this time. Captain, maintain your current position. An escort will arrive shortly to guide you to our leadership. And Captain, welcome to New Terra Station. The escort ships that arrived an hour later were unlike anything Moldar had ever seen. They were clearly human in design but incorporated technologies that seemed decades ahead of what humans had possessed when they left. The ships moved with impossible grace, their engines producing energy signatures that his sensors couldn't. Identify New Terra Station was even more impressive up close. The massive structure rotated slowly in space, generating artificial gravity through centrifugal force. Gardens and parks were visible through transparent sections, creating the impression of a world floating among the stars. Ships came and went constantly, carrying people and supplies between the station and nearby systems. Commander Rick Hayes met Muldar at the docking bay. He was a tall man with graying hair and eyes that held both curiosity and caution. Behind him stood other humans, all wearing uniforms that Muldar didn't recognize. "Captain Muldar," Hayes said formally, "it's been a long time since we've seen a council representative. What brings you so far from home?" Muldar struggled to find words that wouldn't sound like begging. "Commander, the council faces unprecedented challenges. The Borgarian hive has launched major attacks that our military cannot counter. Our technological systems are failing in ways we cannot repair. Dark energy anomalies threaten entire star systems." Hayes listened carefully, his expression growing more serious. "And you believe humans can help with these problems?" "We know you can," Muldar admitted. "Many of our failing systems incorporate human modifications that we never fully understood. Our military tactics have become too predictable without human innovation. And we have theoretical research by a human scientist named Amanda Fox that may be crucial to solving the dark energy crisis." At the mention of Dr. Fox's name, one of the other humans stepped forward. She was a woman in her 40s with intelligent eyes and the kind of confidence that came from solving impossible problems. "I'm Amanda Fox," she said simply, "and I think I know what's happening to your star systems." Hayes made a decision that would change the course of galactic history. "Captain, you'll be our guest while we consider your request." Dr. Fox brief our leadership on the dark energy situation, and send a message to Admiral Grant. Tell him we may need to organize an expedition back to Council space. As Muldar was escorted to guest quarters, he caught glimpses of life on New Terra Station. Humans worked alongside alien species he had never seen before. Children played in gardens that shouldn't have been possible in deep space. Laboratories buzzed with research projects that pushed the boundaries of known science. The humans had not just survived their exodus from Council space. They had thrived. They had built something new and wonderful in the darkness between stars. And now the question was whether they would be willing to use their newfound strength to save the civilization that had rejected them. In his quarters, Muldar sent a message back to Council space, knowing it would take weeks to arrive. "Have made contact with human leadership. They are considering our request for assistance. Prepare for possible human return, but on their terms, not ours." The galaxy's last hope now rested with the species the Council had dismissed as chaotic and inferior. And in the irony of the situation, Muldar found a lesson that the Council should have learned long ago. Sometimes chaos and unpredictability were exactly what a dying civilization needed to survive. 3 years after their departure from Council space, the humans returned not as refugees seeking shelter, but as equals offering salvation. Admiral Paul Grant led a fleet of human ships that seemed to dance through space with impossible grace. Their technology had advanced far beyond what anyone had imagined possible in such a short time. President Claire Murphy stood on the bridge of the HSF Unity, watching the damaged worlds of Council space appear on the viewscreen. She was a woman in her 50s with silver hair and eyes that had seen both triumph and tragedy. As leader of the Human Colonial Federation, she had guided humanity through its greatest transformation. "It's worse than Captain Muldar described," she said to Admiral Grant, who stood beside her reviewing tactical displays. "Half the Council fleet is gone, and those dark energy storms are spreading faster than our models predicted." Grant nodded grimly. "Dr. Fox says we have maybe 6 weeks before the storms reach critical mass. After that, they'll start a chain reaction that could tear apart this entire region of space." The human fleet moved swiftly toward the epicenter of the crisis. They had spent months preparing for this moment. Ever since Captain Muldar's desperate plea had reached New Terra Station, Dr. Amanda Fox had worked around the clock with human and alien scientists to develop a solution to the dark energy crisis. Dr. Fox stood in the Unity's main laboratory, surrounded by equipment that represented the best of both human innovation and alien knowledge. Her team included humans but also representatives from several alien species that had joined the Human Colonial Federation during their years in exile. "The dark energy storms are feeding on themselves," she explained to President Murphy during their final briefing. "Each storm creates conditions that spawn new storms. Traditional approaches try to contain or deflect the energy, but that just makes them stronger." "What's your solution?" Murphy asked. Dr. Fox smiled with the confidence of someone who had solved an impossible puzzle. "We don't fight the storms, we redirect them, use their own energy to create stable hyperspace channels that will actually improve galactic navigation." It was exactly the kind of crazy, unconventional approach that humans were famous for. Instead of treating the crisis as a problem to be eliminated, they saw it as an opportunity to build something better. The first test came when Admiral Grant's forces encountered a Borgarian fleet attacking a Council border station. The Borgarians had studied Council military doctrine so thoroughly that they anticipated every standard tactical response. But the humans brought something new to the battlefield. Instead of engaging in traditional fleet combat, human ships scattered in seemingly random directions. They used unconventional maneuvers that violated every established rule of space warfare. They attacked from impossible angles, retreated when they should have advanced, and coordinated their movements in ways that appeared chaotic, but achieved devastating effectiveness. Captain Zevtal, the Borgarian fleet commander, found himself facing tactics that made no sense according to everything he had learned about galactic warfare. Human ships would appear to flee, then suddenly attack from directions that should have been impossible. They used their own damaged vessels as weapons, turning retreats into ambushes. Within hours, the Borgarian fleet was in full retreat. They had prepared for every possible Council response except the one approach they had never encountered: pure human creativity unleashed by years of independent development. Admiral Grant sent a message to the fleeing Borgarians. "This is Admiral Paul Grant of the Human Colonial Federation. Tell your leaders that the galaxy has new rules now. Adapt or face the consequences." While human military forces dealt with the Borgarian threat, Dr. Fox and her team began implementing their solution to the dark energy crisis. They deployed massive energy collectors at strategic points around each storm, devices that could channel and redirect the chaotic energies. The work was incredibly dangerous. Dark energy storms could destroy ships instantly if approached incorrectly. But the humans had developed new shielding technologies and navigation systems that allowed them to work safely in conditions that would have been fatal using traditional Council methods. Supreme Counselor Murthak watched the human operations from his command center, unable to believe what he was seeing. "They're not destroying the storms," he said to his aide Jeltar. "They're transforming them into something useful." "The human approach is unprecedented," Jeltar agreed. "Instead of fighting natural forces, they're learning to work with them." As each dark energy storm was successfully redirected, it became part of a new hyperspace network that was faster and more efficient than anything the galaxy had ever possessed. Trade routes that had taken weeks to travel could now be completed in days. Communication delays that had plagued the outer worlds became things of the past, but the humans made it clear that their assistance came with conditions. President Murphy met with the Council leadership in the great chamber where humanity had once been dismissed as inferior. "We're not returning as junior members seeking approval," she announced to the assembled delegates. "The Human Colonial Federation offers partnership with the Galactic Council, but only as equals." Counselor Zextar, who had once mocked human departure, now found himself in the humbling position of negotiating for their return. "What are your terms?" he asked quietly. "First, no species holds authority over another," Murphy replied. "The old hierarchy is replaced with a federation where each member contributes their strengths and has an equal voice in decisions. Second, innovation and creativity are valued alongside tradition and stability. The galaxy needs both order and chaos to thrive. Third, we share knowledge freely. No more keeping crucial information secret or limiting access to technology based on species status. The negotiations took weeks, but the alternative was the complete collapse of galactic civilization. The council delegates gradually accepted that their old system had failed. They had created a perfect machine that couldn't adapt to unexpected challenges. Technarch Yivdal, who had once dismissed human modifications as chaotic interference, now worked alongside human engineers to rebuild the galactic infrastructure. "How did you advance so quickly?" he asked Dr. Kevin Walsh, the human scientist who had discovered their new star systems. Dr. Walsh smiled. "We stopped following everyone else's rules and started making our own. When you're not limited by what's supposed to be impossible, you discover that most limitations exist only in your mind." The Vidari had spent centuries perfecting existing technology. The humans had spent 3 years reimagining what technology could become. They had combined alien knowledge with human intuition to create innovations that neither could have achieved alone. The transformation of galactic civilization took months to complete. The new Federation faced challenges and disagreements, but they approached problems with a diversity of perspectives that made solutions possible. Human creativity combined with alien wisdom, chaos balanced with order, innovation built upon tradition. Admiral Paul Grant became the first human to hold a position of galactic military leadership, not as a subordinate following alien orders, but as an equal partner in maintaining peace. His forces included ships from dozens of species, all working together using tactics that blended the best of every military tradition. Dr. Amanda Fox led the new Galactic Research Initiative, where scientists from every species worked on projects that pushed the boundaries of known science. Her approach encouraged wild theories and impossible experiments alongside careful analysis and methodical testing. The Borgarian Hive, faced with the combined might of the new Federation and tactics they could never predict, agreed to a peace treaty that ended their expansion. Even they recognized that the galaxy had changed in ways that made their old strategies obsolete. President Murphy established her office on New Terra Station, which became the symbolic heart of the new Federation. The massive space station, floating between star systems, represented humanity's journey from the edges of Council space to the center of galactic leadership. Years later, Counselor Zextar would often stand in the observation deck of New Terra Station, looking out at the stars and reflecting on how close they had come to destroying everything. The pride and arrogance that had once defined the Galactic Council had nearly led to the collapse of civilization itself. "We thought order was strength," he told his aide during one such moment. "We believed that chaos was weakness. But we learned that true strength comes from balancing both." The galaxy had been saved not by eliminating its chaotic element, but by embracing it. The humans had shown that diversity of thought and approach was not a problem to be solved, but a strength to be celebrated. The new Federation faced the future with confidence, knowing that whatever challenges the universe might present, they had the creativity to find new solutions and the wisdom to build upon past successes. They had learned that no single approach to life's problems was sufficient, and that cooperation between different ways of thinking could achieve miracles. The species that had once been dismissed as too chaotic and unpredictable had become the key to galactic survival. And in their success, every member of the Federation discovered that their own unique contributions were valued and essential. The galaxy had almost died from too much order. It was reborn through the perfect chaos of co-opy.